This episode of Outside Insights is brought to you by Placers, a values-led staffing partner helping businesses and individuals reach their highest potential. Build a flexible workforce or take the next step in your career at myplacers.com. Welcome to the Outside Insights podcast. Our goal is to provide content and ideas that help you close your personal and professional gaps by hearing how others have done it. I'm your host, Chris Burkhard, and today I'm kind of more than thrilled to have Tracy Davidson on the show. If you're in the Mid-Atlantic region, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, you may know Tracy from TV news, where she spent decades telling important stories. What's great about today is we get to hear her story. Welcome to the show, Tracy. Thanks for coming on Outside Insights.
I'm very excited to be here. Very excited for this conversation, Chris.
I am too. Tracy, I've heard you say many times that you tell our stories, the listeners, as a TV anchor and as a news reporter. I sense it's really important for you to begin to share your story. What's behind that?
Well, it just became time. I've been a journalist for 40 years, telling other people's stories. And I thought maybe if I could tell a little bit of my story, I could give people hope. I could give them some information, some skills that will help them navigate the ups and downs of life.
I think that makes sense, and that I think it's how you've conducted yourself in that role. It makes sense that you would continue on that journey. You know, I've had some really interesting folks with different backgrounds on the shows over the year. A treasurer of a state. No one had any idea what that person actually does. And it was really interesting to learn what they do. I think we know what a TV anchor does. Oh, we see them. There's shows about this, but let's start with that. What does a TV anchor and a news reporter do? And then maybe we talk about the path to get there if somebody's curious about how to get there.
So before I left NBC 10, I was the Responds investigative consumer reporter. We call it Responds because people would write into us with a complaint about a company. We would fully vet it, look into it, and try to figure out if we could help solve the issue. So that's the reporting piece of it. So I was a reporter and an anchor. I would start reading a lot of news apps very early in the morning, get on the train, the R5 if you're old school, or the Thorndale of New School. Take the train into the city about 8:30. We have a 9:15 meeting. Most newsrooms do. It's your editorial meeting where reporters bring their ideas of what stories we think we should cover. There are the obvious stories that you know of during the day, the early morning fire, the court case. And then there are, what are people talking about? And did somebody get a tip about another story we should be following? And for me, it's looking at all of that as in my anchor role and participating in those discussions about what we should cover. And then I have my own stories, and those are the response stories. And each one, we probably have 12 to 15 that are being worked on at any given time. Where we are, if somebody says, well, I called the phone company 18 times and they never called me back. Well, I need to see your phone records that you called 18 times. And I need to see the contract that you signed with them. And I need to see that you paid them. And then I can start to call the phone company and say, this person says that they didn't get the phones you say that you sent. So let's figure this out. So that would be how I spend my day. Sometimes I would go out on a story and I would be interviewing the company, interviewing the individual. Then by 2:00, there's another editorial meeting where we go over what we are going to cover in the 4:00 show, what we're going to cover in the 5:00 show, what we're going to cover in the 6:00 show, how we're going to cover it. Is there going to be anything special to it? Are we going to, if we say this is one of my little mini pet peeves, we would tell people in a snowstorm, the state has declared a state of emergency. Does anybody know what that really means? They just think it sounds scary. But the reality is, and so I would say, well, let's tell people what that means. It means the governor has flipped the switch so that they can access all kinds of resources at a given at a moment's notice and move them around where needed. And so we would talk through that and then go on the air at 4 o'clock. And so I would anchor the 4 o'clock and then the 5 o'clock. And then sometimes we have a post meeting where we go over what went well, what went wrong. Was there a communication that we could have improved? And by 6:20, I'm on the train back. So that's a quick look at the day.
And that's a day repeated over and over and over and over again. Yeah.
Every single day.
So, when you watch this on TV, it's the narratives handed to you 6 seconds before you go live. Sometimes there's a rewrite 10 seconds beforehand. Is any of that true, or is that just
No, it's very true. It's more glamorized in the TV shows, but so on the set, we are looking at a lot of different screens. So we have direct messages coming from our executive producers. We have the general emails that go to everyone in the newsroom. And then, of course, we have all our social media channels, the way we're talking to everyone. And so if something's happening, and a writer in the newsroom has written a story, and I am about to read it in, 3 minutes. Now, my co-anchor is reading another story. So that story just got put in, the story I'm about to read. And I'm looking over it and saying, I think we actually have the name for this person. We're saying that police have not identified them, but I think we do. And so at that moment, I am direct messaging my executive producer. I am looking through the emails of the reporter who had been covering it all day, who's constantly sending in updates of whatever they're getting in the field, so that I can see, is that something that I can ad lib? Can I just throw that in? Or have the police said they are for sure not looking for anybody, or they are looking for 2 suspects, whatever the nugget is. As I read over that script that just got put in, I can be curious, which I naturally am, much to the dismay of many of the writers, because I'll be quickly, messaging them, wait, do we not know what time this happened? Or what are police saying? Or have we called the school district to get their side of the story? So yeah,
you're vetting, you're asking questions and communicating with everybody, literally just until the moment that you read it.
I am.
How interesting is that? Did you always know you wanted to be an anchor?
Oh my gosh, no. This was never the goal. People ask me that all the time, and they say, "Did you always know you wanted to be on TV?" And I would tell you, I would have thought that I would have been an astronaut before I would have been on TV. That was just never in my dream. I just didn't. I caught the journalism bug when I went to college and started asking questions and covering news, and then I did news for radio stations for a very long time, until somebody said there's a position open. And I thought, well, that doesn't sound fun at all, having to worry about hair and makeup. So I jumped.
If someone wants to pursue that today, what do you got to do? What do you have to sacrifice to pursue that?
Today, I talked to a lot of journalism students, and the reality is, when I was in college, the new media, we call it social media, the new media that we work on, the platforms we work on now, hadn't even been dreamt of. So what you need to do is know how to ask good questions, be curious, know how to vet the validity of any statement, how to get all sides of the story. And so to get on any platform, I would say be curious, hard work, ask for help.
You'll be surprised how many people will inquire about that as we get rolling with this. It seems as if people are always trying to figure out, how does someone that they perceive to be successful, that's had a long career, won 15 Emmys, they all think we just woke up where we are. And, the path to get there and the hard work to get there is the part that gets misunderstood.
And I do think that, our brains help us to make quick judgment calls, right? And in most cases, that's helpful because it does the shortcuts for us. But the perception that people have when they see someone on TV is, I automatically know what your childhood was like, where you went to school, where you grew up. And for me, I grew up in a challenged home with 2 siblings and 2 parents who had substance use issues. There was often violence. There was often chaos. that ultimately became my superpower because I was able to find my peace and quiet by listening to the radio. So I learned my music. And so then when I went to college, I was obviously first hand up when someone said, "Who wants to join the college radio station?" But then I went to a state school south of Rochester. I worked a bunch of jobs so that I could stay at college. I was a bartender. I babysat the general manager of the radio station where I worked kids in the summer so that I could stay there. Um, I remember, and this is what I tell college students, please don't think that your first job is going to be some high paying job because I ate macaroni and cheese, 3 for $1, made with water, not milk or butter, because I couldn't afford that for a long, long time. So I hope that you like what you're going to get into.
I think that I'm so glad you shared that part of it, in that there is a tendency for folks to think they're going to start with the VP title, that they're going to start at the top,
Yeah,
and that in reality, your own version of this, you're an overnight success, 30 years in the making, right? Like,
yeah,
I'm very, very much an overnight success. It just took me
sure.
30 years to get there, right? And I think that's an important lesson, really, in themes of careers, and that you better love what you do to manage that along the way. That is for sure. Um, you're doing different things today. I think you've always given to the community, always been out there sponsoring things or delivering keynotes or being at the right spot. What's your objective today with your new platform? What do you hope to achieve?
Today, I'm trying more and more to speak to women in business about preventing burnout and walking through life with a little less stress, a little quieter, ways to quiet the chaos and separate the noise from what's really important. Because once we're able to do that, then focus becomes a lot easier, right? And I think that probably a lot of people could use that. I called my dentist office the other day and I said something to the woman who was making my appointment. And she said, "Oh my gosh, reduce stress, prevent burnout, sign me up." Because I think a lot of people feel pulled in a lot of different directions these days.
I think you're right. I think I'm not sure people feel that there's a legitimate source for help. There's a sense of drowning with that burnout. I see it with the workforce. Folks working multiple jobs to make ends meet. They come home, they've got families and life and dance lessons and soccer practices and trips to the grocery store. And before you know it, they're right back at it again, right?
Right.
So I think we share a passion around that. Your burnout story. What are the handful of lessons? What are you teaching people to do to take charge of that? How do they manage their own burnout?
Well, the first thing would be is that it is within us. People have asked me, "Oh, well, now you're doing something so different by doing in-person speeches and keynotes." But the reality is, over 30, 40 years, I've been sharing information with people on air to help them make better decisions for their family, especially in the space of consumer news and personal finance, right? Well, now I'm just able to give people information on how we all have the ability inside us, the confidence, the resilience. These are all skills that can be assessed and developed. It's not like you just have it or you don't have it. And so, I mean, real world, I use a rubber band. I think you and I have talked about this before. I say we all get out of bed with it a little bit stretched. And then we read our news feeds, it can stretches more. And then something happens with a kid, or SEPTA is late, or the boss says he needs the report earlier than he did. And so we walk around totally stressed. And there's two ways to look at it. Either number one, you need to figure out how you can bring it in a little bit, and or you can allow for more space. Allow your stretchiness becomes even more stretchy because you're not holding everything so tight. So the first thing, and it sounds so simple, and if you're listening to this and you're about to roll your eyes, hold on a second. You'd be shocked at how good a deep breath feels. I was just teaching young kids about deep breaths, and I said, breathe in like you're smelling a flower, like envision a flower, breathe it all in. It smells so good. And then you have to blow out the birthday candle on your birthday cake, like really blow it out. And so there is where you can start, is just the breath. And then go ahead.
No, go ahead. I think what what I have experienced is, I like this long form where I can really get into a dialogue with someone and understand what makes them tick, and we can really offer the audience some things that help. But I do a short video every week that's 60 seconds or 90 seconds. And the most watched thing I ever did, Tracy, was on gratitude.
Mm.
And it was simply, I teach a leadership class, and the class was doubting that a gratitude practice was important or possible for them, that they
Uh-huh.
couldn't settle down. And it's silly to think in those terms. And I know you believe in gratitude, which is sort of why I'm heading down this path. But
Yeah.
to think of all the stuff I've ever put out on leadership and life and stuff, that there's the most interest in gratitude, which I think ties very much into your point of burnout.
Right. And you can practice it in any way you want. If you say, well, I'm not the journaling type, I'm not going to write it down when I wake up. I'm not going to write it down at the end of the day. Or I always say there are a lot of things to be grateful for. Sometimes they're harder to see. Sometimes they're really easy. You walk out, the sunshine. Thank you, Lord. Right? Sometimes it's harder to look for the little glimmers, but they're always there. And when if you're focused on the glimmers, you're focused on what you want to be grateful for, it puts everything else in perspective. So then you start to bring this rubber band back in. When I was diagnosed with breast cancer, that's an easy one to be like way out here and stretched to the max. There's lots of things to be scared about, I guess, sad about, angry about. And it's not a but. And there are a lot of things to be grateful for. We live in Philadelphia. We live in the United States of America. We have world class healthcare. Like all the list is long. So breathing, so gratitude, so looking at what takes up your time. Oh, I don't have time for anything. I am just so busy that I'm burning out. Do you really know where you're spending your time? We've all done the little audits on our exercise or our eating, what we eat every day, or what we exercise over the course of a week, or we let our devices do that. But do you know where your time is really going over the course of the day? If I were to say to you, like, here's an hour, would that help with your burnout? My guess is you're going to say, oh my gosh, what I would do with an hour. Well, where are you spending your time? And do you really know where you're spending your time? And if I was giving you two hands and said, this, make it up, social media scrolling or time with your significant other. Now that looks simple, of course. The problem is we don't always see it that clearly. And we end up spending way too much time doing things that don't matter to us.
Well, the challenge though, Tracy, is we think when we get that phone that in some ways it's a deserved break, right? We're going to de-stress. We're actually, we're going to achieve this goal that we're talking about by just doing something for ourselves. And that, to me, it's almost like eating a gallon of ice cream. An hour on the cell phone, by the end of it, I feel just as guilty because where have I been? What have I done? What have I spent my time with? So, the many of us have that addiction, I know. And, but that's where our time is. That's how we get it back.
I think number one, addiction is right. I remember years and years ago, I interviewed the author of a book and it was entitled Facebook Addiction. Everybody thought he was crazy. Everybody thought, well, that just can't be because Facebook, it was relatively new. But it is, number one, an addiction. And number two, we all know, I think it's very clear what exposure to these phones is doing to our kids' emotional wellness. But we forget to check ourselves. We know that those pictures on Instagram of our neighbors in Cancun are perfectly staged. We know that's not their life 24/7. Yet something in the back of our head says, oh my gosh, we're missing something, or we got to keep up, or comparison is a thief of joy. And that's what this is for the most part.
I'd just like the hour back because I've looked at dog and pig videos for an hour and have no idea why, frankly, right? Like
Well,
somebody
and
knows more about this algorithm than me. I don't know if you would, this is how you've approached things, but there's something to the Stoic philosophy that, we can't control what happens to us, but we can control how we react to what happens to us. So I don't know if that resonates, but I think that's, guys, there's always some pre-show banter and discussion, and Tracy and I got all giddy because we have a lot of similar life beliefs. And I think that's sort of one area that we share.
Which so many skills of resilience are about just that. Something happens, you know that you tend to see the world like this. So you have to check yourself before you respond to that. Because, again, the brain doing the shortcuts for us, they could be wrong. So you have to check on how you're going to respond to that. And what can you change and what can't you change? The serenity prayer works every time, whether you believe in prayer or not.
Tracy, personal question. As a breast cancer survivor, I have a sense that you learn things through that it could be a life-changing, work-changing, purpose-changing kind of scenario. But I have a sense that you were wired this way before that you had a lot of these core beliefs, the spiritual side of you, the way you looked at things, the way you help people. Did that amplify your message? Did that draw it forward? Or I'm just curious about your perspective there.
I think, I can sit here and you can sit here too. We both talk a lot about the gratitude piece, right? But when
Yes.
I was diagnosed, that became super clear to me. And the second piece that became clear to me that I do think that I was walking around with, I just hadn't used it a lot, was it is just a waste of energy and brain power to ask why me. It keeps you very stuck in any situation. But if you can
Doesn't fix
ask,
anything.
doesn't fix anything. It doesn't move you anywhere. It keeps you stuck. And if there's anything that I don't want to be, it's stuck. So almost always, and with this diagnosis as well, and I was in a bad Vespa accident in Italy a million years ago. There's a whole other story. But instantly I know, right? There's a tease. Instantly the question that I start to ask myself is, what could I be learning from this? And how might it be a blessing to somebody else down the road?
So your story, I mean, obviously we all have moments of adversity, but I have a sense that there's things that you'd like to, if you can build. I've heard you speak of resilience. I've heard you address, the burnout concept in some ways. Uh, but how can people rise above the adversity that they have? Other thoughts that you might have?
Well, there are a number of skills that are involved in resilience. One that I tend to lean on is realistic optimism. And that
Mm.
is, given a 50-50, if somebody's standing in the grocery store line with me saying, "Oh, the world is going to hell," is it? And if I have if I have the choice to believe things are going to get better, people are going to be kinder to one another, or things are going to get even worse. Now, I don't have to have Pollyanna glasses on, but 50-50, I'm going to choose positive, and I'm going to see what I can do to move it in that direction. So realistic optimism is definitely one thing that I lean on. And another thing is believing in your own agency. People think that the word hope is an emotion when it's really a cognitive behavior. And it has to do with, again, optimism and believing that you have the ability to contribute to whatever that outcome is going to be. You have agency.
That's such a powerful concept because I think people get to a spot where they think they've lost all control. They don't have any say. They're just a cog in the wheel. This machine is happening to them. We always have agency. We just lose it. We lose our way with it. There's a lot of empowerment in just reminding yourself that you always have a choice. You do control that.
Viktor Frankl,
Search for meaning.
yeah, search for meaning, and you always have the ability to choose one thought over another.
Tracy, it's probably the most discussed book on this show, right? So Viktor Frankl was a mental health professional. He was in a camp during the Nazi regime, and he both experienced and studied the whole experience. And in the end, he realized those that ironically had hope, those that had optimism, those that had that, and that those that realized that they could control their thoughts and their future were the ones that most likely got through it.
He talked about all of the human freedoms taken from you, but the human freedom that cannot be taken from you is your choice of thought.
It's such a dark thing, but if you can
Yeah.
apply that to our base lives, it's incredibly powerful.
Especially when you're talking about when somebody's at that moment thinking, I have no control over this crisis.
Tracy, um, always like to ask guests about books, and that's a great one. Other books that come to mind that you would recommend, since we're just kind of on that topic?
Stillness is the key.
You're a Ryan Holiday fan.
I am. Yeah, stillness is the key. I've been rereading that one. There's one that I have that I'm looking at. It, um, Alone Together. This was written a long time ago when I was studying. A long time ago when I was studying new media before it was called social media, and uh, and it talks about our disconnection that we have come to. It's by Sherry Turkle. The disconnection that we come to from being connected with our technology.
So it's about not being where you are?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll have to make sure we get that in show notes. That's always an interesting thing. If people can get more of what guests are talking about and thinking about. So you shared a couple of things: the realistic optimism, the agency. Was there a third? And we went off on a topic there.
Oh, I don't know. Well, if you can break it out, I mean, yes, agency, and it sounds so sciencey, but causal analysis. Can you see what's actually causing the problem? Can you be curious enough to figure out what's causing the problem so that you have a chance of solving it?
Well, a lot of times we give energy to the emotion of an event without knowing what's actually wrong. So it doesn't sound sciency at all. I was taught by my mentor to practice see, think, and act. That in so
Hmm.
many, it's like ready, aim, fire. But if we can see, if we can think, if we can analyze before we act, it's so much more efficient. It's so much more effective. It's so much more possible that you're addressing it, because so many times we act before we know, and it's not about just work and stuff. It's life. But we're
And it
stressed and it's emotional, so it's hard.
that's the key. We're stressed and it's emotional, and that's what gets in the way too often of figuring out how to solve the problem. I have two family members, both men, both like to fix things. They have such an opposite way of doing it. Is fixes it tries to fix something. If the first fix doesn't work, gets very bogged down in the failure. And I always say failure is it's really just feedback. We're the ones who attach the emotion to it, but gets very bogged down. And so the level of frustration rises, and then trying a second thing and trying a third thing. And, and the failure just grows in his head. And he would deny this, but I think eventually you feel awash in, I'm a failure. I can't fix this lawnmower. The other family member never lets the emotion play a role. The other family member, it is like he is putting a puzzle together. He tried this one, that piece didn't work. He's going to try another one. That piece doesn't work. Well, maybe if I try two pieces together, like he's just curious about it. So there's not much emotion. So it's easier to keep trying and to keep moving forward to find the solution.
Interesting way of describing that. So your producer described you as a servant leader. I always thought if I wrote another book, it would be that everyone is a leader and that everybody has a moment or the capabilities to lead. You don't have to have the title to do it. How do you define servant leadership for yourself? And it seems like such an interesting thing from coming from media, coming from being an anchor. So talk
Mm.
about servant leadership and what it means for you.
Well, and I think that my producer said that because she was also my TV producer a long, long time ago. And I had a
Okay.
lot of young people on my team. And it was really, this sounds like I'm stretching it, but it was really an honor to walk along with them on their journey of growth and learning. And how can I better help them learn
Okay.
the next skill. Yeah.
So you were there for them, you eliminated barriers, you listened to them, you taught, you all those things that help them be successful, which I think is my definition of servant leadership. So makes
I
sense.
also think included in what you just said is people, and I think it's getting more rare. People just want to be seen. They just want to be seen. And I don't even think you even have to go to appreciate it, although I think that helps if you're in a leadership role. and authentic appreciation, gratitude for whatever their contributions are.
Are you
But
talking about acknowledging the grocery bagger at the grocery store? Is that what you mean? Or, you
well,
know,
I do mean that, but I also mean just it is so easy to walk down the hall of your workplace and say, "Hey," but you didn't really I used to stop a lot of young people. Instead of saying, "Hey, how are you?" I'd stop and I'd say, "Hey, tell me something good that's happening in your life. I really want to know." Because too often we don't even look at the person.
I think it starts from the first discussion of resilience a little bit. They're saying, Tracy, Chris, you two are crazy. My life's a mess. I can't keep up right now. Now you want me to stop and actually say, Tracy, how are you?
I think you'd be shocked by how good it feels and how much energy one might get from hearing something positive from somebody else.
think
And look, if that's not the good stuff of life, I don't know what is.
I think the good stuff is that, and I'll stretch it to be one of the greatest ways to make yourself feel better is to do something for somebody else.
Amen.
Uh, right?
I,
And that's it,
yeah,
and that's just proof it doesn't have to be some big thing. It can be looking them somebody in the eye and being there for them.
right, right.
You know, the show isn't about the biggest, most earth-shattering, brand new thoughts, but if we could all just live this way, it would be a better place and people would have what they want and they'd have a resilient life.
Kindness is a big, I love seeing the commercials on the Super Bowl about kindness and anti-bullying and I just think that if we all could be reminded of take a breath, quiet the chaos, be kind to one another, be kind to yourself, be kind to yourself. You don't need to beat yourself up every day. You're doing the very best you can, and it's enough. It's fine.
So I want to pause with you. We've covered a lot of topics quickly, but I kind of want to kind of reset and make sure that you're getting an opportunity to address the themes that you'd like to cover, that we're covering the topics. I know we glanced about a little bit about your time truth audit. Did you want to teach a little more there on how someone could do it as a walk away?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. So my time truth audit and actually I do this with young people when I go into schools and I do it with women in business and any conference that I go to. I say, raise your hand if you would like more time in your day. Well, of course, everyone would, but of course, we can't have a 25-hour day. So, where can you find? And I must give credit to Laura Vanderkam. She is an award-winning writer, has written a number of books and research on how people spend their time. And so, this idea is pretty much from her. Although I'm sort of calling it an audit, what you need to do is go through your day at the end of the day or as you're doing it. We have all these devices, they're right at our fingertips. How are you spending 15-minute chunks, half-hour chunks? If you say, my life, and this is how we do it when we do Lifting Your Voice, which is my personal development day that I co-host twice a year. You'll put that in the show notes, blah, blah.
Yes.
What I say is write down what you say your priorities are. So your priorities have to be, they have to be work. Priorities, I'm sure, are your family, your significant other, your whatever, your health. Write those down. Now, go through your day and in 15-minute chunks or half-hour chunks, as you go through the day for a couple of days, write down how you're spending your time. And at the end of whenever you do the chunks of time, and I do this once a year in a big, big way, sort of in a macro way to say, am I living my life with intention? Look at those two lists. How did you spend your time? And how are you saying that you want your life to be focused on? To yourself or others? We lie to ourselves all the time, right? But what do I say my life is about? And really, what is my life about? Where am I spending my time? And if those two lists don't match up, it's time to adjust the sails.
I find the hardest thing of all, Tracy, around this is giving that the time it takes to do it and being willing to face what you find. I work with people on goal setting all the time, and the hardest thing is for people to find time to decide what their goal is, to decide time what they think about. But I love the concept. I recently did it where if you set goals to look at the pictures you take on your camera and then look at your digital camera and see who you spend time with, where you've been. And I think that's what you're referring to as living with intention.
Yes.
Yet you can do it to see like where you're spending your time to make quick adjustments to find time. But it's a really terrific way to decide if you spent time on things that will get you to where you want your life to be.
True, true. And it's the same thing. You say your goals are this, but then where are you spending your time and your energy?
So you're doing a lot of workshops and public speaking to help people, help women, help others. I'm a big believer in trying to win the morning. You know, the idea of putting the day up for review, meditation, things that I think are part of resilience, things that are a part of gratitude practices. How do you take care of yourself physically, emotionally, and spiritually? Like it's almost like you got to check that box to make sure you're not just talking about it. How are you doing it? How are you fighting your own battle with this stuff?
Well, first of all, I love a morning workout. It sets you up for success over the course of the day. Morning quiet sets me up for success. I have prayer, I have scripture reading, I have just quiet, just be still, maybe meditation, maybe a couple of pages of The Second Mountain, something to just sort of refocus, remember what your intentions are. And I think I'm about to do a speech in a couple of months to a group of Catholic women. I'm Catholic. And one of my suggestions in what I do is, look, the life comes at you really fast in a lot of different ways, and it's very loud. If you want to continue to keep your faith as a focus, then you have to intentionally put things in all of those things that are coming at you. So the apps that you have, you need to add those. The radio stations that are on in your car, you need to have it. I have a little prayer booklet in my center console. So at the red light, I don't pick my phone up. I pick up a little. Now I'm sure people are still beeping behind me thinking that I'm on my phone, but I'm taking a moment to sort of get recentered about what I want my life to be about, how I want to be intentional.
And The Second Moment, if it's the book, is a terrific book that's not just about your second career, but it's about your role in society, community, even faith.
Yeah.
Probably recommended a lot on this show too. It is a terrific read if you're trying to figure out how to have a greater impact, frankly.
Right. I believe so too. So yeah, so my morning is always, and you know what? You have to sometimes change it up. If I feel myself getting into a routine that is not as impactful as it has been, then it's time to change it up. Then it's time to do a little yoga in the morning, or time to do a guided meditation, because I have a monkey brain and it's still, wobbling all over the place at 5:30 in the morning. And that's not good if that's how you're starting the day.
Tracy, I think what impresses me most is your energy around curiosity. How do you stoke that and keep learning where you are in life?
I have always been curious, and I continue to be curious. And I think that, if number one, I think that fewer people would get into arguments, especially surrounding all things political, if people put their judgment away and they became curious. Chris, why do you believe that? I think I believe something else, but tell me why you believe it. Try to, I welcome you to try to change my mind. It's just a constant learning that I think that we can all do, and that will enhance our lives. And look, in this transition that I'm making, I am feeling what one of my leadership coaches used to call temporary incompetence. And she used to say, when you're in high school and when you're in college, there's a lot of things you don't know. So you're used to somebody telling you how to do something, and you think, I have no idea. And I feel like an idiot. By the time you get older in life, you pretty much know how to make the coffee, and I don't know, how to download something, and how to do all these things. Well, then you start doing something completely different, and there are a lot of things you have no idea. How do I even begin to go about that? And for a moment, you have temporary incompetence, but
So
it's only
Tracy,
temporary.
for a serial entrepreneur, I actually live and love that edge of incompetence the most. It's when I know it that I'm bored beyond belief. And
Right.
it doesn't
And
mean
isn't
I'm
it?
good at it or great at it, or it just
Yeah.
the known is not as interesting as the thing that I know nothing about.
And isn't it exciting to learn? I mean,
It
we
is.
forget how exciting it can really be in your brain.
And I do appreciate the lesson that you've just shared, that if we could all ask another question, be a little patient, not immediately judge something, we could all meet in the middle a little bit and realize that we probably like people with different ideas than us.
And that's okay. We can
It
still
is.
like them, right?
It is. So, my favorite questions to ask, um, what advice would you have for your 21-year-old self, Tracy?
Have hope that things will get better beyond your wildest imaginations. Just keep working hard, and and staying in the light and making your own sunshine. That's what I told a relatively new employee coworker at NBC 10. He came on and he said, "You've been around for a long time. Do you have any words of advice for me?" And I said, "Make your own sunshine. I mean, you can feel good about yourself."
I think if I didn't know you, it's hard. How does someone find that conviction? It's like, come on now. How do I dig in deep? Um, it seems too easy.
Well, no, it's not too easy. I think it's kind of hard because I think too often we look to external factors for validation,
You're
right?
right.
But
And
but but where, here's me. I'm all about accuracy. Who's to say that they're accurate? The one who knows you the best is you. And you still and when we're back to you have your choice of thoughts.
so my closing question, but you can go in a lot of different directions with this if you'd like. You certainly earned that with this, but I think it fits you more than any other guest I've had. But when people leave a room after hearing you speak, or perhaps it's even when listening to this episode, what do you hope that they feel called to do next from your platform, from your ideas?
Whatever it is they've been afraid to do or thought that they couldn't do it, I hope that they leave braver than when they came in. Because I'm always telling people it doesn't, where you started or even where you are right now, doesn't have nearly the impact on where you're going to go as where you have decided that you want to go. Right? It doesn't necessarily, where you came from, where I came from, didn't determine where I wanted to go. Where I was when I, fell down, made a mistake, any of us, wherever we are, that doesn't always determine where you end up. What determines where you end up is where you decide you want to go and how intentional you are about walking that path every single day. And get real with yourself. It's so easy to point the finger at, well, I would be happy if my boss was nicer or my partner picked up his socks or if, or could you make your own self happier? Or could you choose to figure out what's keeping you from doing X, Y, Z?
Well, I think it's back to agency. Own your own happiness.
Right.
Own your own happiness. Tracy, it's good stuff. If people are in the Philadelphia area or beyond, how can they find you and what's next for you?
Sure. So they can find me at tracydavidson.com. And I do a personal development day for women in the spring and in the fall. Our spring one is March 22nd. I don't remember the fall one date, the date for fall, but it will be on my website. And so if you're in the area and you're a woman and you need a boost, it's a gift. I've wrapped up and put a bow on a day for you.
We'll get those dates out for spring and fall. That is for sure.
Okay.
Tracy, it's been a lot of fun to have you on the show. I like when I leave with a homework assignment too and things that I can apply. It's been a gift to me and to the audience. So just appreciate the time you spent with Outside Insights today.
Thank you. I appreciate being with you.